You either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Listeners, look to your left. Now look to your right. If no one is there, that's kind of sad. But if there are people, beware. Your fellow man could be a mutant lurking behind the face of a human. Welcome to the Good, the Bad, the Bird podcast. I'm mutant fear-mongering Nicho.
And I guess I'm a mutant Chris.
You could be.
I did think long and hard on what useless mutant superpower I would want, and I haven't yet decided.
You would have the powers of a raccoon.
Probably.
Yeah, no, it's not even a question at this point.
Yeah, but I don't want to be Squirrel Girl. But she is pretty cool, so hey, I guess, be Raccoon Girl.
My knowledge of X-Men is limited to the movies. Okay,
so I do want to preface this with, I love X-Men. I am not the X-Men expert. However, when this movie came out in 2000...
Yeah, if you haven't guessed it, we're doing 2000's X-Men.
The best version of X-Men, in my humble opinion, and I will fight people about that. I knew nothing about X-Men when this came out. I was not super, I did not have access to comic books. I was just given what I got and called it a day. So when this movie came out, I was enamored. This was my favorite type of superhero thing. I was over the moon for this. And yet I still could not get comic book things. And we didn't really, we had a family computer, but it was for, educational and emails. Not X-Men.
Yeah, I was in Germany by this point, so I didn't have access to a lot of things. So I don't even remember if we had, I'm sure we probably had comic books at the BX or something, but it just wasn't something that I was super interested in. And then same thing with Spider-Man coming out a couple more years after this.
Yep.
These were my introductions to superheroes, and that's why we wanted to cover them. Is this it's kind of this era of
undiscoveredness
/ our introduction / the
this was kind of the beginning of the Marvel craze in a way
/ rise to the start of comic culture becoming more mainstream.
Absolutely, because this one was a little bit of a risk. Fox wasn't, totally certain that this would be the hit that it was gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
So, for a lot of us, we were not, it was not cool to know everything about comic books, and you had to work a lot harder to know everything about comic books, where now I finish an X-Men movie, and I can Google real quick to see who does what later in the comics. Back then, you really couldn't do that. So this was, for me, the start of my love of X-Men. However, with that said, this movie came out after the animated show had already aired.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of the show. And then after this movie came out, my friend was like, hey, the show and this are the same thing. And I went, they are? And so that is 99% of my love of X-Men is this movie. And then the rest is all the original show.
Okay. I don't know. we'll get into where I left off with this a little bit later.
Sure.
But 2000's X-Men, it's the story by Tom DeSanto, Bryan Singer, and screenplay by David Hayter. Directed by Singer, starring the now famous Hugh Jackman as Logan and Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
Patrick Stewart as Xavier.
Of course.
Ian McKellen as Magneto. And Anna Paquin as Rogue.
And as my husband says, hey, is Halle Berry in this movie? Yes.
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 Yes, your husband's crush.
Yeah.
Celebrity crush, I'm aware.
The fact that this has so many big names is interesting, because at the time there was really only a handful of big names. It wasn't the whole cast was star-studded.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was Hugh Jackman's big debut.
Oh, we'll get into that. Big debut in Hollywood.
Absolutely. But now, thinking of anyone else playing Wolverine, blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
The man is Wolverine, despite the fact that he craves song and dance. He is Wolverine.
Yeah. X-Men, the musical.
He would love that. They got close with Deadpool.
Yeah, I still haven't seen the last Dead. I'll be upfront about this. I am very spotty on my X-Men watches. Spider-Man's another thing, but X-Men in this era, I've only seen the first one. I know I've seen the second one.
At some point you've seen it.
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen the third one.
Okay.
And then I've only seen the reboot First Class and then the first Wolverine movie. So, like, I haven't seen all the other stuff that people love about this franchise. So my viewpoint is pretty much this movie.
I have now seen all of the X-Men stuff. However, with that said, I am very partial to this movie. Like, this one lives on a pedestal for no goddamn reason in my mind. It is not cinematically better than any of the other X-Men stuff.
I do want to go into some of the other ones because I have a feeling this does cinematically sit higher than all these other ones for for many reasons.
For me, it does.
Again, I 100% remember 3 of the 4 of these in the entire series I've seen. Well, scratch that. If you count Deadpool.
I do count Deadpool.
Okay, then
I also count the just Wolverine little tiny franchise that happened where it was just him.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Because that is the fun about this movie. Is this movie, with the exception of not having Beast and Nightcrawler, which I agree, everyone, a shame, we are all sad. This one really touches on everyone's favorites X-Men, Wolverine. He is the number one X-Men. Whether or not he's your favorite doesn't matter. Much like Harry Potter revolves around Harry Potter, X-Men revolves around Logan for the movies. Because it does. He's easy to film, and we've got Hugh Jackman locked in. He can't leave.
Fair.
No, legally he can't leave. So like, we've already got it locked in, and in this one, they did choose at least a somewhat interesting kind of side character one. Then the other ones we go through more of the standard ones, which that one I think depends on who you are and what you like.
Maybe one day we'll get to them.
We will, for sure, because I do like them, but they're also a mess.
But our sources for today's episode include commentary by Bryan Singer and Brian Peck, making of documentary, as well as interviews with cast and crew. I do think it's interesting that while this is what we think of as like the big start of our comic book movies,
it sure is.
This X-Men had been wanted to be, or people had been wanting to adapt X-Men since the 80s and early 90s. And while I personally am not a big American comic book reader, I do think it's interesting to see the Marvel's evolution from when it was founded to kicking off superheroes. They kicked off the superhero genre in the 30s.
Absolutely.
And then by 63, when they started making X-Men, they were moving past the super sci-fi elements of people turning into superheroes via radiation or bitten by various creatures.
One of the things that I do think Marvel does very well, and has always done very well, is they always try and make their superheroes somewhat time period intelligent, right? Like the fear of then plays into whatever the new comic or superhero coming out has to do with. And so X-Men has been a very long-standing and successful group in the Marvel world because it is so easy to tie to a bunch of different groups and social climates and problems that we see throughout time. And we'll talk more about that, especially with Ian and Patrick Stewart's roles in this movie.
Yes. And before we really dive into X-Men, Chris, what are we drinking today?
In true Wolverine fashion, we dug around in your fridge and found 2 random beers that have probably been in here for a year, at least.
I think I've had them since... No, because last year was Japan. I've had these at least 2 years since the last time we did October.
This feels very accurate. Cheers. It tastes fine. I don't think we're going to get food poisoning.
We'll be good. So, X-Men... I do like that with our main intro, we're given like this brief narration. Gives us a setting up of the themes of change and evolution. And not just change, but rapid change. And fear of the unknown that leads to. Something I find interesting that in X-Men lore and the mutants lore is they've been around since ancient times, with Apocalypse being considered the first mutant. And then just slowly more and more of them happening through evolution or one way or another.
I also like that this X-Men takes the time to do a quick little backstory to kind of build up the audience's relatability to what the mutant capturing in the beginning could be relevant to as far as like real world history. And I do think that's part of the reason why X-Men stands as long as it does, is you can just kind of lightly tweak that background to kind of fit a more modern audience. Well,
and not just slightly tweaking it, heavily setting it in or giving us that slight introduction and then setting another light introduction into one of the most defining events of the 20th century, the Holocaust.
Yeah. And also, I do think that this setting also kind of harpens back to a bunch of other action films that we were previously familiar with Nazis, and World War II being the main setting for the villainous arc being kind of a callback to other action films we're already familiar with in 2000. I think is a smart way to get this started and have this movie's stay power continue on, because you're familiar with this arc, you're familiar with the parallels.
It gives it something timeless to attach itself to, the greatest tragedy that's going to be potentially paralleled in the future within this movie.
Exactly.
But it's a way to set it up early and make it slightly different with him bending the gates and
absolutely
giving a little bit of fear already of, okay, well, the Nazis fear the Jews, so
and I also
giving them a little bit more reasoning, I guess.
And I also think that this one handles the integration of mutants into the real world and into real history a little bit smarter than some of the other ones handle it. They start off, and granted, a lot of the mutants in this movie are wildly overpowered, and I know in the comic books people get even more crazy overpowered, but for the first X-Men movie, the fact that we start off with integrating them into history, having it be kind of realistic in its integration as well, where we're not getting too fine in the details, but we can kind of sort of imagine as an audience what that would look like, I think is a really smart way of just kind of leaving the world a little bit open-ended. So that way we have room for these wild and crazy powers later.
Yeah. But it's also because Singer wanted to make a serious attempt at making a superhero movie for the fans as well as for people in it, or just or us who are unaffiliated with it yet.
Absolutely. And I think he does a great job, because even if you hadn't seen the TV show or read any of the comic books, you get a nice, quick background, and you don't need all the gritty stuff. We don't need to know exactly who everyone is in these first few minutes. I just want to know what the world looks like.
Yeah, and it's something interesting that we see around this time, as well as we talked about with video game and other comic book movies being taken more seriously. I mean, hell, Lara Croft Tomb Raider came out a year after, and then Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 years later. And these aren't the first time that we've had people trying to make live-action adaptations of comic books or video games. We had the 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, various Marvel TV movies, even Shaq's 1997 Steel, I would say it was a semi-solid attempt at a serious movie.
Yes.
And I mean, hell, we had Superman in the 80s, but that's the thing is, the way they have this one set up and tie it to the real world right away starts setting it apart from what they called it. They didn't want to make it a comic book movie, even though it is a comic book movie.
There was definitely some fear on how well this would do, because Batman and Robin had come out before this, flopped massively. And so there was that fear that whatever comic book hero you do next might be Batman and Robin. Because on paper, Batman and Robin, comic book-wise, stellar. It just was executed terribly. Yeah,
it's when they start getting a little too goofy, and I think that's where it starts blurring the line of, is this a comic book, or is this supposed to be set in real life? And that's where...
And I think Blade coming before this one and really setting a nice, like, dark and heavy, but realistic superhero movie set in this kind of overarching, not dystopian world, but very grounded world. I think that kind of also helped pave the way for them to say, okay, we'll take a little bit of a risk with X-Men, and then also ended up taking a little bit of risk of hiring some of these actors. They didn't have everyone's roles figured out when they get started.
Well, maybe that's like what we talk about in Hellraiser 3, our episode of Hellraiser 3 with Sugi, where you get more and more studio involvement as these properties get bigger and bigger.
Yes.
And they start getting goofier and goofier because you have people putting their nose in saying, hey, maybe we should tone it down a little bit. Because, like, even looking at the Blade trilogy.
Yeah, the Blade trilogy got weird. They did get goofy. But I do think that the X-Men especially is one of those franchises that it gets goofy and then it got serious again. And now we're getting back to goofy with the Deadpool-Wolverine combo. And I do think that X-Men is one of those few franchises that can ride the goofy wave so much better than other franchises. And this movie even kind of touches on it with a couple of jabs to their own franchise, mentioning their own silly outfits that they have in the comic books, talking about different characters who really should not be in the same room as each other, because like one is timeline doesn't exist in the same, their child is in the same room as them as an adult, and you're like, okay, sure, but they don't care in this movie. And I think setting it up this way where we're going in really fresh, but we also don't really have this hard expectation like later Marvel movies where we try and have like 6 Iron Man movies, doesn't quite ride as well because we took it too seriously at the beginning. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing too, is it's not just tying it to the Holocaust, but what makes it a little bit more timeless is when we get to the Kiss of Death, setting it up slightly in the future, where it's saying slightly in the future, so it's not like it gives you that expectation that it's close enough to now without doing the super sci-fi version of like video games where it's in the year 20XX.
No, I think they do a great job, especially since the X-Men designs, especially comic book wise, are heavily 70s and 80s inspired. This one holds on to that by still making it timeless enough with everyone else. Just there's occasionally one character who is hanging on to some goofy outfit or hairstyle. I think it works. Yeah, I mean,
because you have to have a little bit of iconography to go with it. You can't just completely devoid them of what makes them them.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of glad they like hammered home some of these characters' overarching silliness from like the TV show, because we learned in the commentary that the director was a huge fan of the TV show. I'm glad he brought some of the over-the-top cartooniness from the TV show into the movie. It makes these characters very identifiable at a quick glance.
Yeah, very much so. But even then, when we get this first kiss, this is the second time in this movie so far we've seen powers.
True.
That makes what's coming up next not completely unfounded. Because when we do get to the mutant problem with Senator Kennedy questioning everything, to be fair, considering everything we've seen up until this point, we have one person that almost killed a person just by kissing, and then we have who we know eventually is going to be Magneto pulling the gate, starting to pull a gate down with his powers, and it's like, okay, he's not wrong.
Yes,
he's not 100% wrong. I will say where he is wrong is it's where he's completely made up his mind and he's already completely against mutants altogether. It comes across as bigoted rather than genuinely concerned about public safety.
And I love that we go very simple with this first movie and we leave the more minute finesse arguments for the later movies where we've already set up the world. We've already set up the strife that the X-Men or mutants face throughout the world. This one is just a real quick blanketed statement of like, some people are for it, some people are scared by it.
Yeah, he sets up the mutants to be guilty without proven innocent.
Exactly, and it's a nice, quick, clean cut of who is our bad guy, what's the climate for this world look like, and we can get on with learning about actual characters and building the actual superhero part quickly.
Exactly. And even then, after they have this kind of hearing with Jean Grey, and we have the nice little kind of noirish moments of, I do like that they give Magneto kind of that old school, like, trench coat, like, waiting in the back of the room, leaving.
And I do love, too, that a few different times the commentary would talk about how, like, they enjoyed the revealing of certain big actors. However, most of these actors, by the time that we're now reviewing this, are such big names that it does not feel like a review. I could point these people out in a crowded room. And I love listening to them feel like they're revealing something big for this movie. And I'm watching and be like, of course that's Ian.
Yeah.
Look at him. Who else could that be?
Oh, yeah. But it's also setting up that it's not just humans against mutants. There's opposing views within the mutant community itself, with Singer comparing Xavier and Magneto to MLK and Malcolm X. Again,
a good modern comparison. Yeah,
tying it to the civil rights movement. So now we have another real world implication that this movie is kind of paralleling, but in I'd say a lighter tone.
No, and I think that's where this movie, being a first one of its go, really hits the nail on the head. Other, very specifically Marvel and a couple of DC ones, they go through and try and have these quick political ties or these quick climate ties, and they're so pinpoint or so minute and time period specific that when we come back and watch those movies later, it feels more like a history class as opposed to being something that can be updated and relevant today. This one hits the nail on the head.
Oh, very much so. And I mean, to be fair, they probably can't set up a proper community, so it's like they're the only one. Like, they know they have like a loose network. I mean, we do see that there's kind of a community, but it's still like an underground community, kind of tying in with McKellen and his sexuality of like having to be underground and homosexual during the 70s and 80s and I think into the 90s in the UK.
And his input on this in this movie was very interesting. He had a lot of really great points to bring to the table as far as what what a minority group could look like in these situations. I love that they were able to bring some of that finesse into the movie from his experience, because I do think that that is something that has resonated with people for a very long time about the X-Men.
Yeah, very much. I mean, that's the thing is, like you said, even though these movies revolve around Wolverine might not be your favorite character.
No, and yeah, he might be the main character for the movie, but there's so many good ones, and honestly, a lot of these characters aim at different aspects in different movies or TV shows or in the comic books, meaning that if you really like one of these characters, you can really get into that character and have a lot of more stuff to dive into, which is a lot of fun for a fandom.
Oh, very much so. I mean, the more you have to dive into, the more fan theories you can get, the better.
Absolutely.
But that's one thing that's interesting about this introduction to the world of mutants is that, one, they're already a known entity, but this movie doesn't really focus on a singular person like a lot of origin movies start off, like Wolverine's origin movie.
Yes.
And even though, like, don't get me wrong, Wolverine and Rogue, it is their story.
Yeah.
It's their introduction to the world of mutants that we're seeing as fresh eyes with them. It's a way to diversify with giving multiple avenues to potentially explore. I mean,
absolutely.
Singer even said the series introduction was for new people of the franchise, or for people new to the franchise, because, yeah, he had to condense 35 years of history down, as well as cutting down many prologues that they did use later on.
Absolutely.
But he couldn't keep them in this movie to keep it a consistent movie, and I think what he edited it down to works so well.
I agree, especially because it was really smart the way he handled some of the background characters to kind of explain, like, there is more. And we do feel like we get a good amount of the main group of X-Men, and then we do get to see all of the background kids or students going to school and exploring their powers, even just quickly, adds to this world.
And here's another thing I appreciate with Singer in this, is he, at the time, he hadn't even been interested in comic book movies, he just wanted to do a sci-fi movie.
Sure.
He was not a comic book fan, so he didn't read the comics, but he was influenced by the animated series in making this.
Same, my brother, same.
But that's the other thing, too, is, like, once we have this, like, 10-15 minutes of setting up the world, finally we do get to Wolverine, which a lot introduced in small, and that's the thing, is it's all introduced in small bits before reconnecting to the main focus on the teenager who obviously is in a danger stateside, so she's hitching to the middle of nowhere, Canada.
And I love his excuse for why Canada, because a lot of people did originally complain about the filming not being in America.
Well, they're Vietnam vets, or people dodging the draft for Vietnam.
I love that Singer's main excuse was, he likes working in Canada. A lovely place to work, I think, is what his quote was.
It's also cheaper usually to work up there.
That was also in that quote somewhere. But he also was like, well, obviously this story revolves heavily around Wolverine, and Wolverine is Canadian. So of course it's in Canada, and I was like, sure, man. But that does mean that half of our cast now has to, in Canada, learn fake American accents. Except for one who already was American, and she has to learn a South African accent. Yes,
that was funny. And then Jean Grey, the actress who plays Jean Grey, is Dutch, so, like,
everyone's accent is all over the place, and I honestly love it. It is a trope that kind of sort of comes back as a bit of a gag throughout these movies.
Well, yeah, because he says they abandoned it basically by the second movie. He liked the idea for the first one, and then he's like, we can't do this. This is a lot of work.
Yeah. And unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of these actors and actresses would go on to have to be good at American accents. Hugh Jackman specifically.
Yeah. I forget he's Australian.
Very thick Australian accent at this point in his life, too. It's gotten a lot better. But listening to interviews from this time period specifically, he sounds aggressively Australian. And the fact that he is convincing enough in this movie that you don't notice it until someone points it out. And same with the rest of the cast, with obvious exceptions being Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, who, at this point, I don't ever want them to do an accent. They should always just talk like themselves at all points in their lives. It was impressive that I honestly did not catch how many accents were attempted and failed in this movie. Because then when you go to the second one, you just expect it kind of in this, like, silly, I don't really care what people sound like. Of course, everyone's coming from all over.
It's probably been about 20 years since I've seen the second one.
I have only seen it recently because I have several friends who are very big X-Men, and when they heard we were going to be reviewing this, we had a bit of a binge.
I bet. Also, speaking of voices, fun bit of trivia, the truck driver is the voice of Beast in the animated series.
Which, much to my sadness, Beast does not make an appearance. A lot of the roles that Beast would have taken, they just gave to Jean Grey, because, while technically Story was Singer and DeSanto, this did have a bunch of pre-writes before it eventually was sold to Century Fox, and they gave it the green light and eventually got to their hands.
Yeah, he also combined various other characters with Rogue.
Yeah, which makes sense if you are a big fan of the franchise and you're like, the hell is this character? This is not the Rogue I know. Understandable. It's because we had very little time and only a handful of things that could go right, and a lot of people's number one love, Nightcrawler, not in this movie. But eventually we do get him in movies and everything is resolved. Don't worry.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But I do like, as we're introduced to this mysterious cage fighter, that...
I think that for a first big film for Hugh Jackman, this is the stupidest intro scene they could have possibly picked for this man.
Okay, see, I dig this one because...
I love it, but also, for this scene specifically, he had not yet grown out his sideburns.
Yes,
and you can tell.
Actually, okay, so there's a couple things with that. It's actually, this is a much later shot, so he did have his sideburns starting to grow in.
Yeah.
But he was also in a lot better shape than he was in later shots.
Yes, he is.
Because he was cast late. This was like 8 weeks or into shooting or something.
And they did not have a long time to shoot this.
No, exactly.
No, I love this as his first role. It really solidified who Hugh Jackman was and will become, and this is a fantastic first role. This is his first scene on film to the most American audiences. Diabolical.
Okay, on the other hand, I like this because it introduces how strong he is as a character, but like initially of like in his fighting skills to a point against people. But it's also using the sound effects. The sound effects are very good. To tell us that he's a little bit of a mystery, because it's telling us he's a mutant of some kind, but we don't know because we don't know. We see flesh and blood, but he's making metal pinging sounds when he's being hit. No. Sound design-wise, perfect. Unquestionably good. The thing that kills me, that gives me the tickle every time, is this is so aggressively early 2000s written. This is the one man in a cage taking down whoever he wants because he has steel bones. It is fandom to the nines. He is shirtless. He is sweaty. This is his first scene. This is the mostness we could possibly have done for fan service for Wolverine. And we do it in the first scene. Yeah, do it. Yeah. This is, I believe, 99% of the reason the newest Deadpool Wolverine combo has the shirtless scene it does. I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know what you're referencing. But let me just say it's glorious. He's much more ripped in that one. And angels sing to us as... Amazing. But it's that same scene of, like, if you flip the page, it'd be like, okay, it's a half-naked chick coming out of the pool. Yes, and that is also a silliest scene ever to be, like, the first thing that an American audience is going to get to know you by. Because it is this, and then the next scene is a scene that my driving instructor showed us as safety and why you should wear a seatbelt. Well, I mean, kind of hard to wear a seatbelt when you're still in a dive bar. True, okay, but when we get to the driving scene, that was a scene that and then was cut off before he could get up and be like, and that's why you wear a seatbelt. Yeah. But that's the other thing, too, is like when they cut away from the fight to the dive bar and Rogue is sitting there eyeing the jar, it's these nice little details of showing her desperation. I also love that for this movie, they chose to make Rogue wear essentially Aragorn's costume. And she's just got her hood up being all mysterious, which is funny because it does harken back to the TV show and the comic books, because it's comic books, and why wouldn't we be over the top and give her that? Where in the real, like, I think if this was redone today, a hoodie would have done just fine. A few more belts and she'd be on the Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts level. 100%. And it's just so out of place, too, because everyone else, they did not have a huge budget for this movie. So a lot of the extras are just people that were standing around, or just, hey, quick call out, who wants to be in a bar fight scene? And people would show up. So she is, like, the most out there dressed person in this dive bar
wearing her little Legolas hood.
Yeah.
Creeping around with her gloves.
She's an American. She doesn't look Canadian.
I would argue that none of us...
I know. I'm talking, like, stereotypically, a lot of the people in the dive bar look like they belong in the backwoods of Canada.
That is true. But I do love that, like, instead of giving her any form of practical thing, they really thought to themselves, let's really hammer home our love of the comic books and the animated show, and lean into the overly aggressive 80s and 70s fashion choices that had. Yeah. But everyone else, please just wear your normal biker shirts and, like, your leather cutoffs and all that.
Yeah. But even then, outside of her, there's these little bits of building up that the UN is having a summit to discuss this mutant issue again.
Yeah.
Little bits that, hey, this isn't just a US issue, it's a worldwide issue.
Absolutely. It does add a level of tension as far as, like, the idea that there is nowhere to run eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and, like, I mean, that's why they were in Canada to begin with, because as we see with Wolverine, once he's ambushed, and it's revealed that he's a mutant to everyone, while showing he's a badass.
Of course.
Cool mix of practical and digital effects for the claws at this point.
Absolutely.
But, like, I get it. I mean, even Rogue freaks out too, because as far as we know, this is the only other mutant she has seen in her entire life.
And he has knives in his hands.
Exactly. / took a beating. And also just showing that even mutants are cautious of each other because they don't know what's another potential threat. Building up more so, like, okay, maybe the senator has a point. If the mutants are afraid of each other,
yes.
What do us regular people who don't have defenses against them? What can we even do?
Absolutely. No, it's a great setup, and honestly, Rogue is played fantastically.
Mm-hmm.
I think really hammers home the, like, young teen scaredness and nervousness really well in this first part of the movie.
Oh yeah, very much so. And even then, like, it's the subtle things they do in this where Wolverine, Logan, whenever he, like, puts his claws back, he kind of has, like, this little shake of, like, in his head of, like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, it's also showing that he has a short fuse as well of, like,
absolutely.
In just, like, 2 scenes and a couple pieces of dialogue, we know what Wolverine's about.
And again, the reason why Hugh Jackman is fully and always will be Wolverine is these little details in the acting with this. Because he did have practical props, but a lot of it was CGI, especially the movement of the claws. And he didn't want to have, the prop department was very particular on what they would agree to do as far as, like, materials and use of the claws. Because again, tight on budget, we're filming really fast here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't have a ton to work with as far as, like, what his superpower is. In the same way that eventually we will see Magneto and Xavier, how their powers really are just them standing around making faces while the CGI team does stuff for them.
Yeah.
That is hard to do acting-wise. And I'm very impressed with everyone.
Yeah, Xavier's just scanners with less head explosions.
That's true. At least he gets a cool machine and a cool wheelchair, I guess.
Cerebro.
Yeah, Cerebro's cool.
But I also like in this scene that this is showing that we have a small insight of once they've been outed, they already are living on the outskirts of society. They're living on the outskirts of society.
Yes, I do love the quick details that the commentary talks about with showing off Logan's camper setup that they run to and are escaping with how he's got all this stuff. And they go through all this time be like, oh yeah, he's got a bike on the back, and that's how we later on tie on the bike that he steals from Cyborg, which, great detail. Now that you've pointed it out to me, I see it. I've watched this movie tens of times. I have never noticed this before.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've always just assumed that, of course, Logan knows how to ride a motorcycle. Why wouldn't he? Look at him.
He's a badass biker boy living out of dive bars.
Of questionable age and origin. Of course he knows how to ride a bicycle.
Yeah. But again, like you say, it's the little details of where, while we've seen him be a badass with a little bit of, like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. When he does discover Rogue in the back, which I love that it's like, okay, he can pick up the minute hearings of things around him. When she's very desperate and she says, I saved your life, because it works so well, because in her mind, she really thought that she saved his life. She warned him about someone trying to shiv him at the bar, but it has that moment of, like, sure you did.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, wait, in her mind, yeah, she thinks she does. She doesn't know that I've got these powers of, like, what my actual, like, powers are going to be able to do.
Absolutely. I also love that while we show kind of the full breadth of what Wolverine's powers will become, we don't hammer too hard on any of the ones that honestly don't work great in a movie, like the heightened senses. Because while cool for the comic books and the TV show where you have time to build, like, a detailed plot that revolves solely around that specific part of his powers, let's be real, in a movie where he can also do steal out of his hands and heal real fast, much more interested in that. I don't care if he can smell good.
Well, and also in a movie when we have 7 other mutants to introduce to, we don't have the time to have the one Peter Parker catching plates developing spidey senses.
Exactly, which then eventually works in with all the other 7 that you just mentioned, because we get a really brief overview of what everyone does in this movie. It's not until later movies that we kind of start to develop this, like, detailed itinerary of, like, everyone can do this, and also this. Oh, and so now can do this, because they accidentally microwaved themselves one time. Nonsense like that. We don't care. I just want a quick overview. This one has lightning abilities. This one shoots lasers from his eyes. Good enough!
Exactly. But that's the other thing, too, is, like, when they are explaining the history of the characters, it's not done through explanations. It's done through two strangers questioning each other. Him questioning her about her hands to help further establishing her coming-of-age fears and uncertainties. Because for Rogue, this is very much a coming-of-age movie.
Absolutely.
We'll get into Logan's side a little bit later, because we don't know 100%. But it works because... Rogue's story works because... Like, just not while as a teenager you're dealing with different hormone changes. She's having to deal with life-threatening stuff on top of just being a regular teenager, or trying to be at least.
And also, Rogue's powers are one that don't show super quickly on film. This is a really great way of quickly getting us through what her problems are, without having to spend an extra couple scenes having her, like, show us what her powers do.
Yeah, because all we know is she almost killed a boy.
Yeah, could be a lot of reasons why, as we will soon find out. The school is filled with people who could kill a boy.
Yes. Yeah, but and then, like, when we do have the car crash, it's a solid way of bringing excitement into the movie after 20 minutes of world building and character development. All really just to show Wolverine healing. And also that while it makes Logan not invincible as we previously thought he was in the ambush or in the cage, that, hey, there's mutants that are stronger than this guy out there.
Yes.
And then even then, that mutants need a team of highly trained mutants to come and save them from time to time.
Absolutely. I also feel like this is one of the few complaints I have in this movie prop-wise, or costuming-wise. Because I would argue that and I know people have feelings about Wolverine's hair in this movie.
Yeah, and Sabretooth as well.
Sabretooth is the one I have the most qualms with. Because he could have been so much cooler.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what they do with him later on.
Yes, and that really ruins this version of Sabretooth. Because honestly, everyone else in this movie feels spot on. In a certain, like, time capsule sort of way. Yes, Wolverine's hair is a little all over the place, and not terribly consistent. I don't care. It still feels like a Wolverine choice. It feels like Logan the character.
Yeah.
And it's consistent enough that I can pick him out of a crowd, even though now it's Hugh Jackman, and I just assume that that's Wolverine. Doesn't matter. But I don't have that luxury yet, supposedly. Apparently I've only watched this the first time. He's consistent. Same thing with all the other characters. Storm's design is really good. I think Jean's maybe the most boring, but arguably she's the most boring looking one in the normal comics too, so, like, she fits. Sabretooth looks a mess. He looks like he rolled around in the costuming closet. There's no consistency with it. Like, I know he's supposed to be a wild man. This is a mess. This is a jumbled heap, and it does not help explain what his powers are, because we don't ever really get told in this movie what Sabretooth does. He just shows up and punches Logan occasionally.
We don't get the side explanation that he's his half-brother.
No, we don't get that until maybe the next movie, or maybe even the third one. I can't remember.
Or Wolverine Origins, because I know there's a little nod.
They talk about it a few times.
There's a little nod later on of, like, him constantly, like, grabbing the dog tags.
Yeah.
But it
not enough.
Yeah, it doesn't explain. It's like, okay, for me, when I'm watching it, it feels like he just wants those dog tags as a trophy, not that there's some sentimental attachment to them.
And even with the other side characters who, like, we get a quick glimpse of who they are, like Toad, is not very well explained, even though he is a very large character, especially in the animated show.
I'll get into Toad later.
We will 100% get into Toad later on. But Singer, being a big fan of the TV show, he knows who these characters are well. These are featured characters, are recurring characters in the show. And the fact that we did this to Sabretooth, it makes him really confusing. Especially if you're not going to follow up with watching any of the other X-Men or Wolverine franchise.
It's to set him up as Magneto's version of Wolverine.
He looks like a dog, though. He looks like a wild mutt dog that can punch Wolverine good. And granted, in this version of the movie, that is essentially what he does. He is just the henchman of Magneto.
Yeah.
Fine, but, like, give me something to explain, like, what does he do? Why is he wearing a pelt?
He can break logs and he can punch Wolverine far.
Yeah, okay, cool, but, like, again, at least with Toad, we get something from the character design. We get a little bit of what the superpowers might entail, other than just the weird, gross tongue. Because of the outfit, because of the posture, because of how he is costumed and makeup, we get that he is slimy, we get the extra Toad bits to him. It's not great. We could do better. We will do better.
I guarantee you, whoever is the same fan of, like, that frog chick in My Hero Academia is the same person who is into Toad for the wrong reasons.
Oh, probably.
Yeah,
I understand. And granted, I think we maybe went a little extra slimy in this movie as compared to other movies and franchises.
As we said in the Hellraiser movies, you get into the 90s and 2000s, and it can't just be bloody, it's gotta be slimy.
Yeah, they did it. They managed to get slimy into this movie somehow. But again, that is my one, like, I love the costuming design. I'm very amazed by how well they managed to do, especially for some of these costumes took hours and hours to put on. Incredible. Amazing. Mystique's costume is undeniably amazing. Because not only, like, this is the pre-CGI'd version that we will eventually get to, where it's more of a green suit that then we get CGI'd over, which is cool, because we did a lot of cool stuff with it. But this one has a mix between CGI and practical. It is incredibly labor-intensive. It is incredibly cool to look at. But this is what we did for Sabretooth, was we just put some pelts on him and called it good.
I'm okay with it.
We could have we could have done just a little bit more, and I think people would have been more hooked on Sabretooth for the long run, because eventually he comes back and nobody gave a shit. Because this was our introduction, and he was really boring.
To be fair, most people don't give a shit about any of the henchmen.
Kind of. Eventually the X-Men fandom grows to the point where normal folk do care, I would argue. Especially by the time we got around to Marvel Cinematic Universe really being in full swing.
X-Men First Class, that whole swing of things.
And then we had a couple of X-Men who ended up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe without the X-Men, because there was some legalese problems, and, like, this character could go over there, but the rest of the franchise is owned by over here.
And they could only afford 3 of the side characters.
Yeah, and also, like, fuck the timeline, don't worry about it. Quicksilver's over here, don't worry about it.
They've retconned that.
Yeah, well, damage was done.
Yeah.
Damage was done, but by that point, people were fluent enough to be able to recognize characters and who goes where, and kind of roughly word could get around easily as far as, like, oh, the reason this movie doesn't make sense is because that's so-and-so's kid. I don't know what they're doing over here. Sabretooth could have been cool. We gave potential for him to be a cared about background character and side henchman.
Yeah.
But I would argue that this movie does him dirty.
He's more so there to
punch things for Magneto.
Specifically in this scene, but also be the punching bag for the actually trained X-Men of, like, the little powers we see of Storm, Cyclops, and Jean Grey.
I completely agree. That is unfortunately his only purpose.
Mm-hmm. I do like it when we have these little punches of action. That's the other thing with this movie.
I do like the action sequences.
Yeah, little punches of action back to world building, where we have their failure, and, I mean, it's a little break again as we get introduced to Toad and his relationship to Sabretooth and Magneto, which also I do have questions, because they don't, as far as we've seen, they don't have anyone with the same power of, like, Xavier or Jean Grey. So how are they able to track Rogue down in the middle of nowhere, Canada? Were they just hoping that Sabretooth happened to come across them, or?
Well, Magneto is the strongest metal user in the world, right?
Yeah.
And there's a man made of metal just walking around.
But how, because we learned that I think what it is a post-watching poor attempt to distract us from Rogue being his target.
Sure.
Because if that's the argument, is like, okay, well then, why didn't they just leave Rogue alone altogether and just take Wolverine when they had him knocked out?
Absolutely. No, I hear you. I get you. I think a little bit of it is the product from Singer being as a fan of the animated series, where those questions weren't really a problem because we could introduce characters when we felt like it. Everything was episodic, and I think they were they were short episodes too. These is a kids' TV show on daytime TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, we didn't really have time to worry about these details, and so the characters that they chose to pare down to fill in were ones that were well recognizable from the show. He was a fan of those. And they pared out a lot of the ones that would have been a little less interesting or too expensive to do. Nightcrawler specifically would have been way too expensive to do in this movie.
Until you have the proof of concept that these were going to make money.
Exactly. And so having a bunch of background side henchmen, I think in the same line, there are cool characters, and I think eventually in the show they do show up, you get a whole group of them, but doing a limited number of mutants as your main group and having just two stupid henchmen and our main man, Magneto, does set you up for hopefully a bigger franchise, which that was the plan. They wanted this to be a franchise from the start.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense. Does it leave holes in the plot? Absolutely. But...
Yeah, no, I agree. And, with this reintroduction to, who Magneto is a little bit more, I do like that they that they do bring it back to, okay, he's the kid from 1944 that we saw. Mm-hmm. And that, okay, he's moved on to, he's
on to world domination, yeah.
I wouldn't even say world domination. He's driven by the fear of what he's seen, so that he's afraid that it's going to repeat itself.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that, again, that tie-in really then solidifies Magneto as a almost morally gray character, because he has a good reason for it. Granted, I think by the end of the film, you have forgotten the beginning intro to Magneto, which weakens the argument a little bit. But that's kind of the idea, right? You lose sight of the original. Yeah, plot.
You forget how history goes, and then you repeat it.
Yeah.
In face of he's a parallel to the Senator fears the mutants fear the humans.
Sure.
So it's that kind of thing. But I think there's a weak thing that they do in this where he looks at the dog tags of Wolverine, and then he looks at the tattoo on his arm of trying to tie their histories together a little bit of maybe a darker past or. They're both burdened by history, but it doesn't do anything with it after this.
Not in this movie, no. It is a bit more of a call for bigger fans of the Wolverine franchise who would know that when the time period of when Logan starts is much farther back than we thought. Mm-hmm. And so it is, I think, supposed to be a nod for that and also a reminder callback of what his purpose is. But this movie doesn't really touch on that. We don't really have time either.
No, it's a story of
it's
potential oppression.
Yeah.
Actual oppression. But
and while Wolverine is by no doubt one of the main X-Men in this movie, Rogue is really the more centralized story and the more complete story. We get a beginning, middle, and end for her character development, much better than Logan, who, truthfully, we don't really get a beginning because that would have been a whole movie. It was a whole movie for itself.
Well, Logan doesn't have a beginning. I mean, it's brought up multiple times, especially in the next couple scenes, that he doesn't know anything past the last 15 years.
Yes, and it is a very convenient way of not having this movie drag out for 2 more hours. Because again, Logan's beginning was an entire own movie. I think 2 movies.
And set up for a sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the pacing of this movie is really good.
It is phenomenal.
Especially when we get into the strange new world with the lab and it's cool high tech, where we've had something that's relatively at our modern era of technology, even though this movie's 25 years old now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Everything that's going on still feels relatively of our time, but this feels just that slightly bit more. And I think part of it is the hanging walls with the lights above and below makes it feel a little bit more high tech.
It helps too that a lot of this was set design, so it could be really out there and lean more into that futuristic setting that Singer was hoping to originally do. So a lot of this feels so far in the future, so sci-fi, that there is no purpose for a lot of this stuff, and it doesn't need to be because boop, 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 the tablet says you're better.
Yeah.
Good enough. Yeah, it will forever feel futuristic that way.
Well, and we don't get to see it fully because Wolverine or Logan is so on edge the entire time. It's when he wakes up, he's about to kill Jean Grey.
True. He'd like to see him try, but yes.
But it also makes him more animalistic in this scene where he doesn't understand, like, anything about... And to be fair, it's a weird building because he goes from this high-tech area to a school.
Yes. A school that was, at the time of filming, the richest man in Canada's home, according to the director. I did not fact check on who the richest man in Canada was in 2000, because I don't care, honestly.
Yeah.
But I guess nowadays this facility is now a museum, so you can go see it yourself if you would like, which is cool. And I do think it adds a little bit to the Xavier over-the-topness, this almost Batman-esque, where, like, if you're rich enough, that alone could be a superpower sort of mindset, where below this incredibly rich school, much like the Wayne Manor, is this incredibly high-tech cave full of, mutant children.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've seen it done before, where superheroes have, like, a little bit more advanced stuff than what the normal person has.
And I think it works really well, especially seeing as how Batman was already a well-popular franchise. This is an easy way to kind of bring about the same idea of, like, oh, Xavier has money, and that's why these people can do this, and that's why he can build this refugee school and just house children willy-nilly.
Yeah, and build superhero bots, because that's one thing
I love superhero bots.
I want to talk about that a little bit, especially going between this and, spoilers, next week we are doing Spider-Man, as I've brought it multiple times.
Yes, it does have a Spider-Man. I also feel it has reminiscence of several scenes from Star Wars as well.
But here's the thing, is this superhero body, even what we see later on with Hugh Jackman, the dynamics have completely changed of, like, the lesser and lesser body fats, where, like, they're getting to a point, even in, like, Les Mis, to look super jacked. He dehydrated himself for a day because he didn't want to have too much water, and they needed that more definition.
I'm going to show you the difference between, well, because you are now fresh, baby Hugh Jackman shirtless, in your mind. I'm going to show you. This is the most recent shirtless Wolverine, and you will notice a stark difference from baby Wolverine in this movie. This man has not had water in months, it feels like. Glistening, perfect abs, and he is significantly older in this movie than he was for the current movie we're reviewing. However, I did mention this to my husband because we both saw this scene and thought it was hilarious. It was sent to me countless times as a Wolverine fan when the movie came out. And I got to turn to my husband and say, look, I appreciate the new Wolverine Deadpool shirtless scene. That was cinema gold. I'm so glad that they gifted the fans of Wolverine that to us. However, I would argue that most fans would be very happy with what this movie's version of shirtless is, because he looks fine. He looks perfectly handsome, and
he's a more realistically achievable physique than this.
Yes, and also
than later adaptations. This one is 100% achievable.
Yeah, and honestly, I would hope that the cinema people listen to the fans, because I am not the only one who has said this multiple times. While the new body of superheroes is fun and fancy and fun to draw, especially draw, when I'm watching a movie, I am perfectly happy with this level of physique being my superhero. This is fine. This is perfectly acceptable. I fell in love with this in 2000. This was fantastic. Posters on my wall of Wolverine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is also what some women think dad bods are.
But think about it this way, though. This man, especially if you were a fan of the franchise or of the TV series, which Singer claims to be, you would know that this man has no business teaching children. He raccoons around for beer constantly. I don't think he's drank water ever. I think he's only drank beer and whiskey for years now.
What does it mean to raccoon around for beer?
Put both hands in the fridge and dig around until a bottle touches one of them, and then that's what you're drinking tonight.
Is this how you pick your drinks?
No, I plan mine, because if I did that, I would be gigantic.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the choosing process.
Oh, if I had endless monies, yes, of course.
This is your raccoon powers. I can reach into the fridge
and find anything to eat. Yeah. Absolutely, and Logan and I share that power, I think. Because it is a running joke that he, barely can, feed himself, is constantly drinking and smoking cigars. He is not a healthy person. The only reason he looks the way he does is because he has the fastest metabolism on Earth.
Faster than Deadpool?
No, that's what the new movie's about. But, like, the idea is, at least in the X-Men, like, especially by this point in 2000, the idea is, like, the reason he doesn't look as old and decrepit as he should is because he has this amazing healing factor. The only reason he looks good shirtless is because he has this amazing healing factor. The man is not taking care of himself in any way. A vegetable has not passed Logan's lips.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the only thing we've seen anyone eat in this movie is beer.
Yes, and I would argue that maybe Wolverine has only consumed beer and cigars for a while.
Yeah, probably.
Why he's allowed to teach children is beyond me.
Well, he's not allowed to...
At the end of this movie, it is implied that he's allowed to...
No,
he runs away.
He tells him about this lake that, hey, this might give you some information. He is not told he can teach.
Not in this movie. Just wait. He is a professor.
Okay.
He is unfortunately Professor Wolverine, sir.
What does he teach, Jim?
I don't remember. It's something really stupid. It might be history, actually. I don't remember.
Well, to be fair, history would
He
make
was there.
sense. Yeah.
But at the same time, this man should not be around children.
I don't know. I think Rogue's a little bit more dangerous around children. Jean Grey's more dangerous. I've seen I remember where the second movie goes with Jean Grey.
They really
She should not be around children.
She is dangerous, but she is not actively drinking whiskey and smoking a cigar at every class.
They are safer around a drunken Wolverine than they are around
Especially because
Phoenix.
if I remember right from the show, he's like barely there. He's constantly getting on a motorcycle and leaving like mid-class, mid-semester.
Yeah.
I bet those children didn't know he was their professor.
Probably.
He was like, oh, the substitute's back.
But I also like that with this scene too, with him wandering around, hearing voices in his head, building this fear.
Yeah, the paranoia.
Again, it's another thing that adds to, the senators might be a little right sometimes of like, these people have unfiltered access to people's minds.
Oh, true. Oh, yeah. And I love that while this movie does kind of show you the more tame powers with some of the kids, we don't focus on it at all because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the whole like world scare.
Okay, here's where it starts to shift a little bit. Is when we see what's her name, Kitty Pryde.
Yes, Kitty,
the one who runs through walls and stuff.
Yeah, she's not meant to be in this movie.
No. She okay, I don't care about the time period wise. She works because in his speech at the Senate, or his questioning at the Senate, he says, well, there's a teenager who can run through walls. What if she runs through a bank? It's showing that, okay, the bad ones that he's mentioning maybe aren't that, or the senator's trying to frame as being bad. Maybe they have free will and they're not bad. She's just a normal girl at school who can walk through
a
walls.
door. Yeah. And I do like that we do tie her back in, because she was kind of just a throwaway line. That was really mostly just fun for the fans of the X-Men world to like catch and be like, oh, that's Kitty. Ha, funny. Because we really don't get into a lot of these background characters. She's not actually named in this movie. You just see her run away.
Yeah, Iceman, or whatever his name comes in the second movie.
Yeah, same thing with the Fire Kid. And there's like a random kid who can walk on water, which is such a benign superpower. But sure, I mean, what if he walks through water and like crosses international borders or some bullshit?
Yeah.
But I love that it does lead to the conversation that we are currently having on like, oh, well, and when it comes down to it, it's just intent like anyone else. Anyone can rob a bank, whether or not they can walk through doors. It's intent.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But this is a great way to, like, without really getting too deep into the topic, for the movie to plant those, like, ideas and those conversations, which the rest of the X-Men franchise does talk about in length, in detail. This way is a quick way for the fans to be able to have those conversations without the movie hammering anything home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you those little Easter eggs of things to look for if you're a fan.
Exactly.
Whereas if you're someone new, it's like, oh, cool, that person can walk through walls. That person can make fire. That person can freeze the fire for some reason.
Yeah, okay, we're not going to talk about how chemically that doesn't work, but don't worry about it, it's fine.
In Pokemon, fire beats ice. That's bullshit.
Also, fire is not a tangible thing that you can freeze. It's a chemical reaction. But it doesn't matter. For this movie, you can freeze a chemical reaction.
Yeah. But I also like that we finally have the full cast together. We've seen everyone.
We finally get to feel like we're introduced to the big ones.
Yeah, while also at the same time making fun of their names, which...
I do love that we eventually, like, lean into the silly.
Okay, here's one thing with that, too. Well, a singer said he tried to use, or he used it as a way for them to embrace their lives as mutants, as their new names are, whatever their code names are.
Yeah.
Jean Grey keeps her same name until later on.
Yeah.
Xavier is Xavier.
Yeah.
And also, the only other ones we hear are Storm and Cyclops, so that argument of the...
I think McKellen talked about this at one point, and I couldn't find the specific interview where he talked about his work in the X-Men and his relationship to it, but he did bring up a good point where he felt there was a lot of parallels to the queer community and how some people do change their identity. They fully change their name, where others might just shorten their name to fit who they feel like they are.
Okay.
Or some people do, like, they fully change it to something completely different, and some people don't change it at all. Some people, that doesn't apply to them. And so I thought it was very interesting that he felt like there was that connection there. I kind of see where Singer was trying to go with the idea of, like, oh, well, for all the fan who is only watching this movie knows, maybe Jean is a nickname. A fan who has not seen the rest of the franchise would not know. I think, and she gets a nickname in the second one.
She gets a nickname because she changes as a person altogether. Like, doesn't she have, like, split personalities or something?
Yeah, well, that's a problem for the whole second movie.
Yeah.
But, like, she does get a nickname, a superpower name.
Phoenix.
Yeah.
Dark Phoenix or whatever. Whatever. She if I remember right, because I did some reading, because
Yes.
I'm a nerd.
Good job.
She becomes Dark Phoenix because she's the first person to have actual connection to the Phoenix Force, which is its own entity.
Yeah, kind of in the same way Green Lanterns have, like, a force. Don't worry about it.
I hate the Grand Lantern. I'm afraid of the color yellow.
Okay.
Shut the fuck up.
Well, okay, all of the colors are meant to be emotions, and yet a lot of the emotions are stupid, and they don't even go through all of them, because some of those aren't emotions, and we all know it. It doesn't matter. That's a rant for a different movie, and we will someday get to that movie, because I freaking hate that movie. It's so bad. But I do see where Singer was going with trying to explain that, like, having Wolverine also hate the nicknames, and then he eventually comes around to them and kind of leans into it. Kind of same thing with the audience, because again, they are silly, because they're remnants of a cartoon and a comic book series.
Yeah, exactly. Why is he called Wolverine? Like,
and that is something that I don't think this movie ever talks about, and it doesn't matter, because it is just part of the silly throwback to the comic books.
I also feel like he didn't choose it. As just like Xavier's like, yeah, we're gonna call you Wolverine, deal with it.
Yeah, okay. In all fairness, I firmly believe that you shouldn't be allowed to pick your own nickname. That's weird.
Yeah, no, if you pick your own nickname, usually
you're
it's
nerd.
really fucking stupid of like, call me Snakes.
Yeah, you're not allowed to pick your own nickname. Your nickname gets gifted to you.
I am the darkness. Shut the fuck up, you little nerd.
Yeah, now your name's Red Bull. Get over it. But I see where both McKellen talked about how, like, he felt like there was an identity to represent what the X-Men kind of covers as a whole, as far as oppression and minority groups.
Yeah.
I also see where Singer was coming from as far as, like, connecting it to the audience and also having fun with the silliness that essentially just is a superhero movie, trying to make it more realistic, but also enjoying some of that silliness. This is one of the lines that I think kind of ties back to, like, what would you rather have, yellow latex suits? This is kind of same feeling. And so I enjoy the line, and I do like that we do not explain anyone's superpower names, and for those who have superpower names that don't make sense in this movie, because we don't talk about Jean's powers in this movie at all, I don't think.
About the superhero names, we get two. Well, outside of Rogue has an actual name, doesn't she?
She does.
Yeah, of like
Mary, I think.
Yeah, Rogue, which Rogue makes sense because she's an outlier. So hers makes sense. So does Storm. She summons weather. Her name's Storm. Cyclops has one visor.
Yeah, but again, we don't talk about anyone's powers in depth. We don't talk about the detailed complexities of Cyborg and his actual powers, or Cyclops' actual powers, in this movie. We just get a quick overview. We get his name for those who need it.
No, they explain his power.
Briefly. They're, again, much like how Logan can sniff things like a weird, like, hound dog. We don't talk about that one a whole lot in this movie, because we don't need to. Same thing with everyone's powers. Everyone in this goddamn franchise eventually gets incredibly overpowered because we just get a layer and shit on.
Yeah, they have to eventually go Super Saiyan 5 because we've been using Super Saiyan 4 for the past decade.
Exactly, and I appreciate that, like, for the most part, we kind of tame it and tailor it to fit who we see. We don't really get into Jean's powers, so her just being called Jean, fine. I don't really care that she's the Dark Phoenix. That's for a different movie's problem. Cyclops? Sure. That's a quick, easy one, because I don't really care what the man's actual name is.
Yeah.
Storm, that sums up her powers perfectly, because otherwise, yeah, maybe I'd be a little confused on what the girl could do.
Yeah, we have to get through them because we have to actually explain, like, Rogue's issues and, like, what she's having to deal with of being an absolute outsider of her powers stealing lives, which...
Exactly, because again, this is her movie. She's the main character.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, like, when we do have this montage of the school, explaining the school and showing how we have all this cool tech and stuff.
Absolutely.
There is a good use of amnesia in this.
I agree.
Because,
and I don't say that often, and I especially don't say that for Logan.
Especially with how heavily overused it is in anime.
It really is.
Where it gives us a reason to be new to the world as well as trying to explain everything to Logan. It gives reason for the exposition.
Absolutely. Do I think it was a little bit of a lazy write for Logan? Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, this really does work for this movie, especially for the first one in the franchise. If this had been the excuse for the fourth one, that would have felt weird. But for the first movie, I will let this amnesia background bullshit slip. Yeah. This is fine.
Well, it's also a way to show that these kids are just like any other kids. They're just...
now living in a rich mansion.
Rich mansion, and have superpowers they're trying to learn.
And granted, I do like how, I think it's the second one, explores normal-ass kids' powers a little bit more, especially background ones, like the kid who can remote control with his mind. There's one that can just control TVs. He is a living remote control, and that's hilarious to me. I would have loved more of that. They do try and put that in this movie, but the budget was pretty damn tight, and we were using most of our budget on Mystique. So...
yeah, we'll get into Mystique.
We will get to Mystique. But, like, even Xavier's cool, overpowered room had to be really, like, very carefully used because it was crazy expensive to do. They had to build a set and also CGI stuff and layer it just right. And then they realized they built the set in a way that they couldn't shoot some scenes, so they had to cut around a bunch of stuff. So I'm not terribly sad we don't get a bunch of background kids all with useless powers like in some of the other later movies or in the TV show. But I'm glad we got some.
Yeah, we don't get like full Suicide Squad of these are really dumb powers to start off with.
No, though I live for a really useless superpower. That is my favorite kind of superpower. So I'm glad that the franchise as a whole did keep that, like, that little tickle of fun.
Very much so. But once we've gone through all that, I like that we go back to Kelly for a little bit and working with the gun issue and weapons in schools, comparing it to the mutant problem, because technically they kind of are issues in schools if they weaponize their powers. Yeah,
and again, it's another really smart way of tying the X-Men back to real-world problems, because now we've covered just about every base for anyone watching this movie and what you might personally be able to attach yourself to.
Well, and also making it a war of, like, you see this when people talk politics, it's an us versus them instead of...
and that's the whole point of this.
Yeah, instead of trying to come to a middle ground. But, like, also at the same time, like, Kelly is spouting all this, and then Mystique justifies his fears by attacking him.
Yeah, granted, though, again, this movie does a good job of 2000-ifying the politics for it. It still does feel fairly relative, which maybe doesn't say great things about how our politics have advanced over the years.
Nope.
But, with that said, I do think that we've now hit literally every trifecta. This movie still feels relevant because we are doing things in a way that, from a movie franchise system, kind of broadly covers enough to make a political villain without spending too much time like some superhero, or it's like Superman sometimes does, where we have to spend a lot of time explaining the villain is just the rich man in town.
Yeah.
This one does a nice quick job of covering all bases, so that way you really are hammering home like, oh no, he is scummy.
Oh yeah, well, and at the same time, because it goes into it a little bit more, instead of, at first it feels like Mystique is becoming she's proving Kelly right, instead of you expect me to behave this way, I'll behave that way for you.
Yes, oh yeah, definitely.
But even then, with like there's good detailing in the filming of this too, where they don't sit just across from each other, they sit on opposite sides of the helicopter from each other. One obviously gives room for her to actually like stretch out and kick him, but it works symbolically as well when they're filming it.
Oh, absolutely. And it does help, too, that filming inside helicopters is notoriously hard to get canonically right. This way, no one's really paying attention, and if it's wrong, everyone's like, yeah, whatever.
Because there's only two people, and it's a way to also build the danger that's building outside of the X-Men. And just like a little bit before we go back to the Adamantium Man again, like in reverse of explaining to Wolverine their entire school and stuff.
Yes.
It's to get everyone else in the school up to speed of like, okay, well, he's got all this super high-tech metal fused to his entire skeleton.
Absolutely. Which, again, adds a quick, like, explanatory reason without having to do, like, a flashback or something crazy.
Flashback, but also build up a mystery around that we're not going to solve in this movie /
Yes.
Give that red herring of, okay, well, he's all metal, of course Magneto wants him, but for what?
And I would say that I do think that's why these first few X-Men films were as strong as they were. That mystery behind who the characters were, especially if you weren't, like, a fan of anything but the movies, that was really fun to watch that develop and see how the writers and the directors were going to, like, divulge all these little details to you. It did feel like truly all connected in a way we didn't have, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where everything is overly written and really intertwined, everyone's in everyone else's movie, that wasn't a thing yet. So it really felt fun to see, like, oh, we're gonna get more, we know we're gonna get a mystery that goes along with this specific character. I can get attached to him.
It's a way to build other things outside of the Magneto problem that's building.
Absolutely, because eventually the Magneto problem is going to be a huge problem. He is maybe a little overpowered in this movie.
I have no clue.
We will eventually get to it, because I think that is why the second one is the way it is.
Okay. But also we have, like, there's little bits of weird romantic tension that they're building between Wolverine and Jean Grey. And...
Sure, they're getting that started for the second movie, as we all know.
Yeah, I mean, just at this...
It's one of those things that is there specifically for the fans who already know. It
feels a little convenient of, well, Wolverine's been away from society so long, Pretty Woman comes.
Yeah, again, it's not played on enough to feel too weird for the fans who are just watching the movie as it is. But it also feels like a nice little quick nod for those who watched or read the comics to be like, okay, we're acknowledging some stuff that's not happening in the film. Like, we know the other's material exists.
Building tension for the future.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, because completely ignoring that the rest of the world of the X-Men exist is kind of a easy way to write yourself into a corner. Looking at you, Green Lantern. So, like, it's an easy way to acknowledge that the rest is there, hint at maybe next one we'll talk about that, even if canonically it doesn't, timeline makes sense. We'll talk about it though, don't worry. It's a nice nod that doesn't go anywhere, so we're not distracted from the actual thing of interest in this movie, which is Rogue and Magneto.
Yeah, and it's just a little bit that just, I get where they're going with it, just it's kind of annoying of, like, it feels slightly out of nowhere.
A little bit, but it's also over so quick that, like, yeah, alright, let's keep going.
Because it happens one more time, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
But when we cut to the Mutant Brotherhood, I mean, we get to see some more of what they're doing, of, like, showing that Magneto is bad, because they're not just trying to promote a message. They killed the aide.
Yeah.
Building up that cult of persecution complex. Of course we have to defend ourselves, because otherwise they're gonna end our freedoms.
And I like that with the set design for this one, not only is it reflective of Magneto, where everything's cold and feels very metallic or stone-like, it also kind of quickly shows off that, like, he's really just in it for himself.
Yeah, Magneto's a multi-talented man. He's a mutant, architect, furniture maker, a bit of modernism with brutalism.
And also his own desk entertainment, as he has to sit there and think about making those little balls on his desk go back and forth all the time.
Oh yeah, that was a cool little touch, especially, like, in the earlier scene when he walks away and they stop.
Yes, a really great use of, like, proving how overpowered he is. Something that I think later in the series kind of, they over Super Saiyan him in this movie, because that's really cool. That proves that he's crazy overpowered. He doesn't even have to think about doing these things. He's just doing them. But then when we've leveled everyone else up, we have to keep leveling him up. It kind of gets to a problem in the later films. But in this film, I don't care. This is cool.
Yeah, it's like when we have to reintroduce the third version of Frieza.
Yeah, unfortunately. The other thing that I really like about this set design is there is room for him to be comfortable. There's a chair and a desk for him that clearly that he likes. His henchmen just have to sit on the steps. They don't have chairs.
That we know of.
But again, it's just showing quickly that, like, he's pretty self-centered, where Xavier built a whole school mansion for these children to play, like, to play in, essentially.
Well, as far as we know, they're at work.
True, but again, it's just an implied quick statement of, like, the difference between Xavier and Magneto.
Yeah.
Really hammering home that, like, one cares about the world and those around him and the children.
Yeah, while the lab's cold, we have the warm atmosphere, homely atmosphere for the school, and then Magneto's is just absolutely cold through and
Very
through.
brutalistic, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I also like that when they giving themselves the name the Brotherhood of Mutants gives like a defining evil force that you can say that it gives Kelly something to fight against if he was ever to make it back. Of
exactly,
I was captured by the Brotherhood of Mutants. Look what they did to me. We have to fight against this.
Absolutely, and it also, again, they didn't technically need to name it because, truthfully, in this movie, while he has henchmen, we're only worried about Magneto. We could care less about the rest of these guys. Minus maybe Mystique, but in this film, she's really just, like, Magneto's side chick / best henchman award. You know, employee of the month, essentially. Whereas in other franchises, she is much more, like, standalone bad guy or standalone interesting character, depending on which movie you're watching and how morally gray she is.
Well, she works as a way in like a war movie where she's a spy that can take on anyone.
Absolutely. And I do like that in this one, while we are given the name, again, it feels a bit like a nod to like, acknowledge the rest of the X-Men universe. We also don't need to focus on everyone who is in the Brotherhood of Mutants. We get a quick, like, a very quick glance at, like, there's other people, and then Magneto, and we're worried about Magneto. He's the main one.
Yeah, we've seen Toad can jump. He can shoot his tongue out.
Nasty tongue, yeah.
Sabretooth, good at punching.
Yeah.
Mystique's the infiltrator.
Yeah, and I think briefly in the background we see Quill, who does not do anything in this movie except sit in the background a half a scene.
Who's Quill?
You don't need to worry about it in this movie.
I don't think he's in this.
He is in the background of a 1 hot second movie.
In the school or?
Briefly.
In the school?
I think it's later in the movie.
Okay,
but he is a hot second in this movie, and it's just enough for you, if you like the character, be like, I found him. Okay. And then you, like, continue on. But yeah, essentially this movie is 99% Magneto, 1% Mystique, and then the other guys are here.
Okay.
They're here because Mystique can't punch everyone. She's busy.
Yeah, she's doing the other dirty work.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
But even then, like, just the back and forth of some of this stuff where we cut back to Wolverine being shown his place, and I mean, I get it, it's a way of them relaxing while this evil's building. But
settling in.
Establishing the boundaries of the love triangle between Jean giving her powers, and a little bit of rivalry between him and Cyclops, while I will say slightly justified, I've never liked him in the 2 movies I've seen him in. He is such a fucking asshole.
So he is a hard one to make likable because he is very much the Fred character from Scooby-Doo, but rewritten. Like, he's meant to be the high school jock, who unfortunately in most scenarios is like the bad guy or the antagonist, and unfortunately, while he does get things wrong and is sometimes the ass, he is not the bad guy. He is just the jock character. And this movie, I love that they, like, over-amped him up to also fill characters that weren't written in, so he is now also the mechanic guy in this movie. Yeah. I love that we just added that to his character list, because in the rest of the franchise, he's really not. He's just Cyborg, and he likes football.
Huh.
He would have done well in sports if it wasn't for those dang eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, like, I get why we have this moment. It sets up the boundary so we don't have to go back through it until the next movie.
No, and I like that we set it up in this movie instead of trying to cram all of this into the second movie, because that would have been a lot to have been like, oh, and now we're all in a love triangle? Okay, weird, but sure.
Yeah, and while that all levels out, we have to keep their side of the story going, too, because when Wolverine's having his nightmares, hinting that, okay, maybe he doesn't fully forget everything, he just doesn't remember when he wakes up. I like that Rogue really wants to help him out with his scary dreams. Yes. But it
like, really leans into that she's actually very caring.
But also continuing to build that how dangerous these powers are, because he almost kills Rogue. Yeah. I mean, he technically does kill Rogue if she didn't have her powers.
That's true. That is very true.
Building a little bit of fear between everyone and further pushing Rogue outside of even the mutants herself, because now they've seen that she takes life force. She took it from Wolverine, who almost killed her, too.
Yeah. And technically they don't know that she probably can't kill Wolverine this way, but it doesn't matter for this movie.
In the movie, they say that if she had held on a little bit longer, she would have killed you.
Yeah, in this movie, he's killable. We eventually superpower him up to, much like Deadpool, probably can't kill the man.
Okay.
Except for that one movie, but we don't worry about that one. We don't worry about that one. That one's for a different time period.
Okay. But I do like when we do. This is where we really start ramping up the movie with the Senator now a mutant. Good parallels to Rogue of now he's forced to be an outsider amongst his own people.
Yes, and I like that he is goopy. Very creepy.
Very goopy. Doesn't explain his powers other than he can just turn watery-ish.
So, okay, they kind of, like, you're meant to kind of put together that he's just unevolving quickly.
Oh.
And it doesn't read well in this context, but, like, sure?
I took it as his power was, I turned jellyfish man.
See, and I think that's a great interpretation of it, but it doesn't explain that just, he washes down the drain at some point and you don't have to worry about him ever again. And I do wish they had kind of maybe added a little extra time and energy into, like, what is happening here and why we need to fear turning into puddles. Because that is the implication, right? Like, that's the goal, is that Magneto is going to turn everyone into puddles of goop.
Yeah, it's that, okay, I know what they're trying to do with it. It's just, yeah, I get it. It's not explained super well, but it's a good way to allow him to escape this unescapable prison.
And I also love that he is goopy, because honestly, it is a great use of early CGI. It still looks a little silly, but you don't have to worry about anything looking terribly realistic, especially with, like, human faces. You don't have to worry about, like, the uncanny valley, because we're already well over that with the goopy eyes and the squished face. This is a smart use of, like, okay, well, we don't want to spend more money on an outfit or making him actually superhero-y. Let's make him goop.
That time I got reincarnated as a slime.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, that's what this poor man just liquefied himself. I don't hate it. I do love that, like, the CGI blends nicely, and I do think that, especially when they talk about how they did combine practical effects later by using real water once he starts getting real wet and goopy, plus the CGI kind of blending those two together. I do think this still looks good. This would not be the spot that I argue the CGI has aged. There is some spots, but this isn't it. No,
exactly. But I also appreciate that while we've seen everything go right for Magneto, this is the first time, like, his plan starts slipping just a little bit.
Yeah.
And even then, like, we see his other continuation of the plans, again, just using Rogue, or using Mystique to get to Rogue, where he uses, like, the way you start to see the cracking in his ideals, where he starts becoming a hypocrite in whatever he potentially might have believed at one time.
Yeah, that's
where
true.
He says, he uses Mystique to say, never use your powers on another mutant, while technically he's starting to do the same thing and gearing up for war.
Yeah, it's definitely breaking him away from kind of the righteousness that you, as the audience, kind of could write off for him, knowing his background. We've moved far enough away from that I've kind of forgotten about the intro and the horrors that he went through.
Yes.
And we've also started to actually do some things that just morally the audience is like, you said you weren't going to do that, and now here we are. So it's really building him up to be, like, a proper bad guy, not just a justified anti-hero.
Leaning into the phrase of, be careful not to become what you're fighting against.
Yes, and I think they do a good job of pushing that line in this movie, again, because this is the first X-Men film. We can revisit Magneto and how morally justified he is in some of his actions in a different timeline, in a different movie. Let me just get the understanding of who he is and what he can do now. Let's just get that under our belts in this one.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even then, like, because we've seen how great his powers are, and now we kind of have to counter that, because all we've seen with Xavier is his power of, like, oh, he can put thoughts in minds. And
he's a human walkie-talkie.
It's hinted, yeah, exactly. It's hinted that he can control people, but we don't ever see him actually use it for control.
Yeah, and I will say that is one of the things that I do think that the later movies do better is Xavier, because they do expand on his powers. I think they bring him up to Magneto's level in this film much better, where he can... It's really amplified what he can do. He gets out of the house a little more, too, whereas this one, he's really isolated to kind of one stage.
We've seen him in the lab, we've seen him in his office, and now we see him in Cerebro, and that's like the only. That's it. Yeah. We've seen him at the hearing, so we've seen him in 4 settings.
Oh my gosh, so many places. Yeah, I think the later movies bring his powers up to a reasonable level, but honestly, I don't really need to understand Xavier's powers for this one. I just need to know that he can do some stuff and that he is considered, much like Gandalf, I don't need to know exactly what he does. I just need to know that the Dark One fears him. Exactly.
We don't get to explain the mechanics of Cerebro, just what Cerebro can do and why they're at odds with Magneto, of why they can't find him, because they're at the same level of like power of Magneto's figured something out to block his powers, otherwise they could have.
And I like that the helmet has been part of Magneto from the beginning of this movie. Like, it was not explained because silly superhero movie, but I like that we do get like a quick, and again, it's bringing that silliness of a superhero comic into a more realistic setting. Like, yes, the hat is silly. It's silly so that Xavier can't read my mind.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, sure. If that's the shape that it needs to be for your tinfoil hat, why not?
That's my exact thoughts when they were talking about it. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that the tinfoil hat technically could work.
Okay, note to self. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do like that the way they show it with the way he's able to find other mutants is through their brainwaves, that they appear different color-wise.
Yeah, that's true. That is interesting.
Mm-hmm. And like, even like, the reason, actually this is probably the reason why they made Cyclops the shop teacher, is so that way they could introduce the gadget of the motorcycle later on that Wolverine
100%.
takes to go find Rogue.
Yeah, and granted, I know that Cyborg in other, like in the TV show,
Cyclops.
Cyclops. Sorry, wrong superhero child. I know in other in the shows and the comic books, I know Cyclops has like a connection with the motorcycle, and that's an easy way to write him in and get all that. I do still find it funny that they've essentially like condensed down a couple other people who also teach at the school and other mutants who are also like the car guy, the mechanic guy.
Well, you've got to, otherwise now if we go back to like Rogue, Jean Grey, and Cyclops, now we have 5 other characters that we would have had to introduce. And
exactly. And while I do like those other characters, and I'm glad we eventually get many of them, not all, but many of them in the movies, they're not necessary in this movie. We don't really care in detail who's doing what.
No, not really. But it's also a good way of plot-wise getting everyone away, because they've sent Storm and Cyclops out to go find Rogue because they're the more experienced, whereas like, and even then Cyclops is like, he's not coming with us because he's too emotional about this. And fair, but that's kind of what you need right now. You don't need 2 people going to wrangle them up, but it gets everyone who could do something out of HQ.
Yes, definitely.
But I also have other questions too of like, they obviously know, and especially with the later movies, we know that Xavier knows Mystique exists.
Yeah.
But yet he has nothing to counter her infiltrating.
In this movie, they don't care. There's too much happening to like really play chess with the X-Men in this movie.
Yeah, it's a good way of setting up that Alfred Hitchcock bomb.
Yeah. Before we actually need it. Absolutely, and on top of that, there is so much. Again, it's very much in the similar idea of the Super Saiyan-ness leveling up of eventually everyone just is more overpowered, and also the relationships get more complicated, because this X-Men in the universe has been going on for so long.
35 years by that point.
Yeah. We've got a ton of stuff. At some point, you just kind of have to ignore something. There's just not a way to do all of it all the time.
Accept it as is and move on.
Yeah, and granted, I know some people had a lot of complaints, especially in the later ones, where it got really obvious that we were really ignoring some stuff to, for the sake of, honestly, understandability and plot.
Yeah.
And sure, I see your complaints, I hear you, but this movie is just long enough for me to enjoy it before I get bored or need to go to the bathroom. I don't need it longer. Let's just enjoy what we have.
Yeah, I feel you there. And like, that's why Logan going out is important to find Jean, is because it builds up their really father-daughter moment of, and I forget how their relationship goes in later movies, but that's what
Yeah, father-daughter, sort of. I mean, as best as Logan can be.
Yeah, he becomes more of a protector of this lost girl because he's been there. Mentally, he's probably technically conscious-wise, as far as he can remember, he's right around her same age, but he has to take the mantle of maturity.
Yeah, and then eventually he gets his memories back, and he's actually like her great-granddad, but don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's when he says people like us, it's that building of solidarity between them all.
Absolutely. And
before we get into the Brotherhood attacking them, because there is a surprise solid surprise attack there and getting everyone immobilized. Cyclops visors that get ripped off his face.
They come off too easy.
Well, no, not.
We need to put a full headband on this dude.
Not just that. I know they're custom made.
They are.
But they look so stupid if you look at them. They feel like headphones that you just took as like a high schooler and put them over your eyes.
I almost guarantee you that's what the prop department did.
No, so all his visors, if I remember right, were actually like custom made by some big...
That's pretty cool.
Some big shade manufacturer. I don't think it was Ray-Ban, but it was
okay. So his actual ones that have the red lenses, those were Ray-Bans.
Okay.
They didn't originally come with the red lenses. They popped out the original Ray-Ban lenses and put normal one or the red ones in. But eventually Ray-Bans was like, hey, that's pretty cool, we're gonna sell those too. The big visor ones was not Ray-Bans. That was the costume department.
Okay, well, it looks stupid.
It does look stupid, but again, it is that lightheartedness that plays back to this idea of like the stupid comic book things where like probably no one would say anything in comic book world about this guy with the weird visor on. But this is meant to be a more grounded movie. We have a nod somewhere.
Okay, I can see it. I still just...
It is stupid looking, but I kind of enjoy it, because again, this is the same playfulness that I think works well for, like, example, the Spider-Man franchise, where they acknowledge some of this only really works in comic book world, where, like, the rules don't really make sense. Everyone is scripted. But we're having fun with it, just tee-hee go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, they're there briefly, because everyone in this scene seemed to have their counters of... Okay, well, they had this planned attack. They took away the glasses with Toad. Storm's weakness is she's physically frail compared to Sabretooth.
Yeah,
everyone.
Yeah, no, it's a well planned attack. I do like that we didn't just use Sabretooth. We got Toad in the mix. He feels like a better bad guy, better henchman, because honestly, he's kind of stupid in this movie.
Well. And even on top of that, like, we've seen a couple things that Magneto can do, but his entrance...
is so cool!
I don't know if... I don't know, Chris, do you like this scene better or Spider-Man's train scene better?
I think I like this one better only because the acting in this one, I feel like, feels more realistically super. The way that everyone who flies feels so weightless and perfect, even though it's all cable work and not CGI... The use of multiple superheroes all simultaneously having that battle, I think is more elegant and coordinated. While the Superman one is cool, don't get me wrong, very Spider-Man.
I know there's a Superman one. I don't know, and I haven't seen a single Superman movie, so
it's just the classic. He saves the train from falling off the tracks. Don't worry about it. That one's not as cool, but yeah, Spider-Man, very iconic. Don't get me wrong, very cool. But I don't feel like there's as much going on. I could watch this one multiple times and catch different stuff. I really like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like them for different reasons, whereas, like, I like Spider-Man's as bringing the moment to bring New York together.
It feels very New York.
This is a very cool villain entrance because... Yeah. He's floating through this broken train, and like we completely see him stop Wolverine.
Yeah, it's a little Matrixy in some parts with the way that it's filmed, with a very dead center and then shifting of the camera, which is cool.
Yeah, good enough of like, what do you want with me?
Yeah.
Who says it was you?
Ah ha ha, villain laugh. Yeah.
But also it's the way that he almost like pushes what he can do with Logan of like bending his arms and stuff. It's like where it's where we start to see Magneto at his almost cruelest, where it's like he's playing with a bug that he's about to taxidermy or
absolutely,
whatever you call that term.
It is incredibly cool. It is. When I first watched this though, I had a friend who wanted to become a doctor. And this was our first, like, deep dive into her learning everything she could and then telling all of us as friends. and this was the first fun fact that she ever tried to ruin a movie with us for, was that the metal that goes in your body for surgeries, fake metal or not, is usually not magnetic. And by usually, I mean almost never.
But this is adamantium.
Which I guess is magnetic, but also makes no sense for it to be magnetic, because his party trick would be just putting magnets on his forehead.
But is Magneto... I think maybe we're mistaking his name as like, oh, it's magnetism, whereas it's just like, no, he just controls metal.
See, that is where at the time, in 2000, we all assumed he could Magneto magnet stuff. And thus, her argument was, he should be fine, because that metal is supposed to not be. And granted, they don't really talk about the metal in his body either. They just are like, your bones are covered in metal, and then like move on with this movie.
Yeah, mysterious adamantium.
Yeah, which we all assumed would not be magnetic, because then otherwise that would suck. Like, think about all of the inconveniences in your life. He would never be able to fly in 2025.
He doesn't fly, though.
On an airplane.
But does he have a need to fly? He does fly in this movie. Why does he take? Why would he take commercial? He has the X.
Yeah, the X-wing thing is. Yeah, they don't have a TSA at the X-wing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. See, he doesn't need any of that shit. He lives on the outskirts.
Yeah, that's true. But that was her fun fact of attempting to ruin X-Men for me, was in her mind he should not be magnetic.
Well, you're wrong. But even then, when it leads into like the standoff, it's really going hard to show Magneto and Xavier's powers of that he's able to control the two minions.
Yeah.
But he, again, a horrifying thing to think of, like, if he was a bad guy, like, what could he really do with it?
True, yeah.
But also kind of putting them at even grounds of how strong they are, of like, it really puts them to a stalemate. The only thing that stops them is the morality of Magneto is willing to waste a bunch of cops and just innocent people's lives, whereas Xavier's like, nope, I can't let you do that.
Yes, that is interesting. I do like that they've attempted to make Xavier as powerful as Magneto. It does feel a little weak in this scene, but again, it is a building up. It's getting there. We're getting closer.
Yeah, he has. There's lives at stake. It's who are you going to prioritize, one over the other? And
yeah,
obviously, Xavier's in the right here.
Yes.
But it's all just to build up that, hey, this war is coming, and that Logan is now finally on a... It originally was to show that Logan wasn't on a path that was aligning with everyone else.
Yeah.
But now he has to, because now they've taken rogue his surrogate daughter at this point.
Exactly. He has a reason to fight now. It's a personal reason.
Even then, like, once we're fully revealed of, like, Magneto's plans, like, from the Senator, I do like that Xavier acknowledges that not every mutant is good, where he's like, we're not what you think. Well, not all of us.
Yeah, it's a good line.
Fear of the many because of a few.
Exactly.
And to be fair, I mean, it is globally terrifying for that of, like, we've seen the horrors that these mutants could technically do.
True, and they didn't really realize the true horrors of what was happening. They did not understand, I don't think, that one of them was being mind controlled. They just saw one guy be able to stop a bullet and then potentially kill everyone, which is still scary enough. Oh yeah. Even when Senator Kelly dies, like, it feels, you see the horrific state if Magneto wins. True. And, like, here's the other thing too with that is, it gives Senator Kelly a little bit of, okay, well, maybe these people who are like him can learn. It also, I think, is really there to have the audience remember that no one deserves that fate. No. Like, yes, Senator Kelly was not a good person. He was clearly, like, he could have been a villain for this movie. And yet, no one deserves to be turned to goop. No, exactly. And even then, like, this is where we start getting the war actually fully taking into place. We had the one little skirmish, but this is where it's going to hit the head as Cerebro is, what is sabotaged. Yes. And I mean, it's a good ticking time bomb. It's a way to start whittling down the X-Men of, like, now that we have, Magneto's taken out the X-Men's leader, now it's up to everyone else to figure out, or the world's doomed. The one person that we were relying on to save everyone is now out of the picture. A great parallel to the end of the first movie of Lord of the Rings. Gandalf is gone, we must continue on.
Yeah, except in this one, Gandalf's the bad guy.
Except Gandalf's the bad guy in this one.
Yeah. But I also like, as we continue on with this assault, that Toad... That's the other thing.
Toad is
like,
still in this movie.
Well, Toad's like ability, we always see the tongue and that he spits something a little later on. But
he climbs walls, which, yay.
And stomps people like he's Mario?
Yeah, it's not explained. I'm not mad it's not explained.
Yeah.
Because, again, everyone else would have to then be explained, and there's too much. There'd be too much happening. I don't know why they chose to include, like, some of the weird side powers and, like, not use them a lot.
Yeah.
There's just like this one scene, you're like, oh, that was odd, but okay.
Yeah, but it's also a scene to show the failing of America as the land of tolerance and peace, and realizing that, okay, this world is a lot more screwed up than we thought. But also showing Magneto's mentality of the loss of one is fine as long as it saves the many, and as long as it's not him.
True. Yeah, that's true. It in the end, it boils down to him being the center.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Even when we get the X-Men's counterattack, we have cool pieces of technology
we
here
do.
with their
it is cool.
tech board and furthering the basically paralleling Magneto's what he's about to do to the Holocaust, now becoming the thing that he feared.
Yeah, true.
And also, like, when they go to work out their plan, I love that when this plane helicopter thing comes out of their schoolyard, the students are like, what the fuck?
I do like that the students, as I like that in this movie, it's implied that the students do not know about the X-Men.
No.
It's just like an underground secret
yeah.
superhero franchise happening. Like, their teachers are all just happen to be superheroes.
Oh, yeah. And I love that we can ignore a bunch of stuff of, like, the government can't see this plane. Like, maybe if Xavier was cloaking it, but we've got Jean Grey here.
Yeah, and they don't explain everyone. Like, we're just go with it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the loopholes. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, and behind the scenes of this, real quick, I do like as they're walking up to, Ellis Island.
Yes.
That with the mutant versus mutant fight, that they were complaining about how tight the suits were, and that they're like, we can barely move in this stuff, guys.
It was hilarious, especially since Hugh Jackman's outfit, the distress was not solely caused throughout the fight scene by the makeup and costuming department. He just kept ripping his own suit, trying to move and punch stuff, and they're like, you know what? Leave it. That's probably how that would happen. Very
much so. But I do like that this fight is much more different than the last time around, where while they have the solid strategy of separating them for lone fights, they don't do it in the what seems like the correct order or the planned order that they did the last time. This time it's like whoever can get it, because like Mystique tries to duplicate Logan, but she can't actually fully copy the real thing of like...
Yeah, she can't copy this rare metal.
Yeah. Or like, honestly, Toad I thought was a joke as a kid because he was goofy, but in this scene he's actually kind of a badass in it.
I agree. I think they tried very hard to make Toad a good bad guy in this movie. It's Toad, and I don't care about him.
Yeah, my one complaint, and it's just because it's a movie of the time.
Yes.
The wire work is very rough.
It is for some of the actors.
Yeah.
Some of them handle it really well, and then some obviously did not have as much practice.
And I think it's because we don't have as much action in like wuxia movies and stuff that we haven't seen that it's like, okay, well, this feels out of nowhere. But also, the Toad when he does his little swirl is because Singer wanted to have him do a tribute to his role as Darth Maul.
Very nice. Very nice. I like it.
But the other thing I like too is that they're all kind of roughly on equal levels. They're all these like, while we see them as these superheroes, they really are more so the henchmen of Xavier at this point.
Absolutely. And I like that even though a lot of these characters feel a little watered down after you get to know the X-Men universe and who these characters could be, I kind of like that they're watered down because it means that everyone's a little bit more on a correct playing field. The fight feels a little bit more up in the air. You don't feel like any one person is so overpowered that obviously they would win. it's everyone kind of for themselves, hoping to fight the best they can, and I like that.
That is until we get to Magneto, which they're a no match for again because he's in a metal building, obviously.
Yeah, Magneto happens to be in metal places all the time, and I do find that convenient for him, but, the whole point is that he's, like, the most bad guy. That's why he took out Xavier.
Yeah, well, it's also a trial to show the extent that Logan's willing to go to save Rogue, where he's willing to pierce himself, which I got some questions. He has to, like, miss all the bones in, like, his shoulders and stuff.
Yeah.
Or can adamantium cut adamantium?
Unclear in this movie.
It's the same hardness, so...
This movie also kind of implies that his healing factor is not as good as we see in much later films, where honestly this probably would not have slowed him down. But I like that people are not overly overpowered yet.
Yeah.
We have time to build up to Super Saiyan level 8 God tier.
It gives them room for growth instead of being at full power to begin with, because this is also the scene that we get him pitted against the first mutant. It's the first mutant we saw him fight. It's his fight for redemption against Sabretooth.
Yes.
Like, to prove himself that he's worthy of being able to save Rogue instead of being this helpless guy against his half-brother.
Which we don't know that. And again, Sabretooth is the one I have the most complaints about. But yes, I like how this all ends up. I like that we get a nice, like, working together between Cyclops and Jean as far as, like, ways to get out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the action is nicely timed. I do think that they managed to also have the Statue of Liberty feel like a fun location without it being too overly American corny. It's close. It toes that line.
Yeah.
But it's not the worst I've seen. So I give it a go.
Because what it does is, instead of making it a joke of, like, of course it is, it's taking this symbolic island for Magneto, which was the first thing you would have seen coming to the U.S. After World War II, to it becoming this symbol that was supposed to be a symbol of freedom and justice for all, that became another symbol of oppression for him. I guess maybe in a way the U.S. version of the swastika for him. And now he's turning that as his tool to change the rest of the world to be mutants with him.
And see, it feels symbolic, and it doesn't feel overly patriotic in that way. This feels like a well-thought-out location.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of other superhero movies, especially early 2000s superhero movies, or action films, are just egregiously American.
To a point. There are ones where I will, like, that's the thing is, like, the ones that I will say really work are, one, Iron Man, which for me is still my all-time favorite Marvel movie.
Sure, it's very good.
And then, like, Captain America, because Captain America, I hated Captain America the first time I saw it, and then rewatching it and seeing where the arc goes of, like, okay, of course he's got to be the all-American patriotic boy, because now that gives him the pure point to fall and become disgruntled with where America goes in their world.
No, absolutely. And I think for the most part, especially more modern Marvel movies have done a good job of touching base as far as, like, being overly American centric. Especially the newer ones, I think, have done a good job of trying to just be, like, generic New York, generic world city.
Yes.
Some of, especially 2000s ones, have this really bad tendency to be like, it's New York, and New York is the best because it's American, and it's the most cool thing. And you're like, okay, calm down just a little bit. Because it doesn't have the symbolism, it doesn't have the depth of meaning behind it. And this movie has done a good job of trying to build all that up. But if you are in a fun, silly mood and you don't want to worry about the political implications that the X-Men movie is trying to make, you can just enjoy them fighting each other on top of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Just punching. That's fun too.
Yeah, no, it works.
It does. It has both, and I like it.
Well, and I also like the scene too because Magneto, while weakened, isn't completely useless. He's just really, really weak against being able to actually fully use his powers.
Yes, it's a nice way of balancing him out, because up until this point, he's been very overpowered compared to everyone else in this film.
Well, it's the payoff of extending past his, or losing track of what his goals potentially were when he was younger. Losing his grip on what made them human. Yes. Even though they have these mutant powers.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do like that when he does save Rogue, that we get the, like, her hair turning gray, like...
Yeah, she becomes the Rogue everyone knows from the comics.
Yeah, using this power took a toll on her, that she's not I can just suck all the life out of someone and live.
Yes, absolutely. I also really like the fun little behind the scenes of Hugh Jackman, I guess, accidentally got a little bit close with the claws in prop department, and thus the scene was like, they kept being like, no, break the chains with your claws, and he's like, I might hit her though.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, especially for a pretty fresh actor, this is something we see that stumps a lot of experienced actors later on. We've talked about multiple action movies where that becomes a problem, and honestly, and some movies kind of kills the scene. I think he managed to act around it really well. You don't notice it until it's pointed out, I don't think. Yeah,
and that's the thing with the ending of this movie too, is it does a lot of pointing out, but it does it in a way that it feels like it naturally sets up a sequel, kind of like how at the end of the first Iron Man, where he holds a press conference and he's like, I am Iron Man. Yes. And then we have the post-credit scene. It feels like all of this was just wrapped up in the end, because I hate post-credit scenes now. We should just get away from them.
We have done too many, I agree.
But I like that it feels like that's what it should have been for some of this, whereas like all the heroes are safe. It sets up the future for Wolverine seeking out answers. And where I think it should have been, like, if this was remade in today's environment, what they would have done is they would have held that news conference, and Mystique's eyes flashing would have been that obvious, like, okay, here's the Easter egg that there's more to this.
I agree. I like that we, from the beginning, though, set up that this is going to be a sequel. There's going to be more. Don't worry, the questions you have, we will get to, sort of thing.
That and Magneto's prison would have been the post-credit sequel.
Yeah, there would have been 2 or 3 for this movie for sure. And I'm with you. I think especially for the Marvel franchise, I know a lot of people like them. I'm tired. I'm done. One is enough.
Yeah. Well, and here, I completely, or I'd say just no,
just let it happen. Just let the movie end.
Yes. But I do like that they keep this movie sentimental and focused around Wolverine and Rogue.
I do too.
Where Wolverine gives Rogue his dog tags as like this token of, I'll return for these.
Absolutely. I like that we continue on with just these characters. We get hints of the other characters and what they might do in the second one, but we're not like truly shifting the camera to them just yet. And even then, I would argue that one of the things that has made these, especially first 3 X-Men movies, as popular and cult classics as they are, is the heavy influence of Wolverine in them. Yeah. Keeping him as one of the central characters makes the second one feel more grounded. We could have left him out and just focused on Jean, or just focused on Storm, or any of the other characters. But instead, we keep him as a main character. It feels more relatable. We feel like we're comfortable in the setting.
It's one plot line to track, whereas like this was Rogue's story, and while this battle is over, the war is far from over. It sets up that, okay, Wolverine's been introduced to this world. Rogue's found her home for place, now. Yeah. Wolverine still has not found his place, because we've hinted at that there's more to him than all these other characters who have a history. He is the historyless person so far, so now we have to explore that next.
Absolutely, and it ends up working out really well for the most part.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, when I rewatch this, while by definition, it's a comic book movie.
It is.
It doesn't feel like a comic book movie.
No, and I think a lot of that is because this wasn't written so hard as a comic book. They took a lot of liberties with it, but they did so carefully and with story in mind, not just fan service.
They didn't get too goofy with it.
No, and when they did need to be goofy or acknowledge something that was comic booky, they did so in kind of a smart way, an acknowledgement to the audience.
They didn't do hey, look, we said the line because we have to relate to it, like in Mortal Kombat of finish him. It's like, hey, look, we paused for a second and then we said it, so you know that we made a reference to the comic or to the video game, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of people, a lot of fans, especially now that these movies have been out for a very long time, I know a lot of people complain about certain characters not being leveled correctly, or timelines, or they would have preferred this story out of the X-Men comic books versus this one. And I think part of the reason why these movies are still good, and the reason why we still can have those debates, is because even though this gets the overarching concept correct, and clearly it was written by people who knew what they were talking about, they knew the source material well enough to actually speak and write clearly with it, we weren't so obsessed with trying to get every fan thing in there, every character in there, everything right, that we were able to write a good, well-written story. and focus on that story aspect, which is something I think a lot of other ones, even now, even modern Marvel stuff, when we have so much source material to cram in there, I think it hurts it. I think we spend too much time fan joking about, oh, you remember that one Star-Lord thing? Well, he was in the background of this one scene.
It's trying too hard to connect it to a larger universe, whereas X-Men has its own. X-Men is within its own universe, and it's expanding upon it out through singular small stories.
Exactly, and even though X-Men eventually could do what Marvel really wanted it to, there was some messy legalese as far as who owns what part of X-Men, kind of same way with Spider-Man, which, much like Spider-Man, I think actually ended up saving it in a way. Granted, a lot of people would have loved to see more X-Men along with all the Marvel stuff, and I'm sure it would have done well. However, a lot of these actors, with the exception of Hugh Jackman, who has spoken more recently about how he's kind of done with Wolverine, I mean, Deadpool being the last one that he says he wants to do ever.
He did it for over 2 decades.
Yeah, and again, there's a legal reason why, which good for him, but this wouldn't be the same as replacing these... Like, you cannot replace these characters in the same way you can replace Captain America.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense to have someone step into the role of Spider-Man because there's multiverse. This is X-Men. Sure, the comics address it, but just let the movies exist, and they have, and they still stand. This is still a good movie.
It's creating a character versus creating a symbol that Captain America and Spider-Man end up standing for.
Absolutely, and so I think in the end, this is an example of what a lot of us are hoping the Marvel and Disney will eventually come back around to. I think we might need to take a while till we get there, but I'm hoping that this sort of storytelling, this sort of superhero movie where, like, if the second one had never come out, no one would have been that mad.
No, it would have just been, okay, they left it open for a potential.
Yeah.
Without doing this cheesy horror film thing of, oh, the creatures at the end, or the Marvel tease of, like, oh, wait, they awaken one of the planet eaters in Eternals, and then we haven't done anything with it for a decade now?
Yeah. And I think this one also takes the lighthearted fan background bits much lighter than the more recent ones, which I know a lot of people are, like, that's part of it. The Stan Lee cameo in this one is so quick that a lot of people missed it. Mm-hmm. I missed it for most of these years until someone pointed it out to me, and I do like Stan Lee. I know him, I do watch the movies and try and find him. But I think this one does everything such a nice, easily bundled sort of situation. It's not meant for a superhero fan. It's not meant for the X-Men fan. It's just a fun movie to watch, and I think they do a good job with that. Yeah,
so what do you rate on a good, bad, weird scale, Chris?
For me, this one's just good. There are some bad spots. There's some CGI that did not age super great, especially the plane.
Yeah, it's a movie of its time.
It is. There's definitely some plot points that could have been smoother. There's some spots where some of these actors or actresses are a little fresh to the screen, and you can kind of tell here or there. But for the most part, this movie's good. I don't think those bads are enough to rate it in the bad category. And for the most part, I would say there's nothing weird about this movie, even though it's X-Men.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with a solid good rating just because I think it did everything right for newcomers. I can't speak on behalf of comic book nerds because I don't know any of that, so, I mean, come at me.
I also don't think you can make a movie that's for specifically comic book nerds and have it be good. In the same way you cannot make a movie for the book fan and have it be good.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But I think part of it is because it grounded it. It made it more believable and interesting, and I think that's why it still holds up today, even with... Well, it holds up with today's issues that we're currently seeing, and also it just a solidly entertaining movie all around. So,
yeah, oh, absolutely.
So then would you recommend X-Men, Chris?
I would, and honestly, I'd really recommend to people who haven't watched them in a while, especially those of us who are in the superhero fandom where I love a superhero film. I've gotten really burnt out of the modern superhero storytelling style. I've gotten really burnt out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just been too much all the time. This has been a really fun go back. I'm now probably going to rewatch a bunch of old superhero movies from the 90s and the 2000s because this is why I got into the franchise in the first place. This is why I was even interested in X-Men to begin with.
Yeah.
It still holds up.
I mean, you have me curious to watch Green Lantern to see how bad it really is.
It's really bad.
Oh, I have heard.
Oh my god. But it's a good comparison of like what we were doing back in the day with superhero movies. They thought they had that one in the bag because they had a bunch of predecessors before that all did well, and the acting was bad, the writing was bad, and the CGI was bad.
Yeah, I definitely recommend rewatching X-Men. I mean, it definitely holds its place in history, and I mean, it's a good start to make people take comic book adaptations more seriously than we'd previously seen. Granted, I mean, Blade did it too, but...
Oh, absolutely. But I'm counting Blade in the same, like, I'm gonna go rewatch it, even though I've seen Blade 100 times.
And Blade's a weird one too, because it falls more into the horror realm than you do when you think of superheroes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna be rewatching a bunch of these from the early 2000s and 90s now, for sure.
Definitely. But we are excited to continue our superhero episodes next week. I mean, we're not done with them 100% yet.
Not yet. We'll get there.
We do have a guest star swinging into our neighborhood for a talk of another franchise that started off the comic book wave that I did spoil we're doing earlier in the episode.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It's going to be a swinging good time.
Yeah. But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.